there. This is July 5th, Independence Day weekend 2014. And I'm in beautiful Northern California. And behind me you see the color of the dried grass. And you can understand how California got the nickname the Golden State, you know. But today, I wanted to talk about current events and basically what I do with my videos, and what I'm trying to do is to convey to people my own philosophy and the gifts that I have been given to me freely. I want to freely share with others so that together we can shape a better world. This has to happen on an individual basis, and it has to happen on a collective basis. We all have to come to some semblance of agreement, as to a consensus, if you will, as to what an acceptable society looks like. Because in essence, what we're doing is we're doing what Jesus said when he said the kingdom of heaven is within us. And we all have the same ability to imagine a world that's perfect down to the smallest detail. It's just imagining the problem and understanding what the solution to that problem is, and understanding that there really is a solution to that problem. A couple of key components to a perfect society, a heaven if you will, is that people are truly free. That's essential, that it can't be freedom selectively as it is now, with money being the greatest deciding factor of what makes a person free. It's financial freedom, and it's very liberating if you're secure financially. It's a good feeling. But all too many people in the world today, I see, believe they can divorce themselves from what's going on around them with their neighbor, and say, well, it's about every man for himself. It's, survival of the strongest, this mentality that's been bred into it by these elitists, these hypocrites. And that's the main subject I wanted to hit on today, was the fact that hypocrisy is insufferable. For any decent human being that values their conscience, you find it absolutely intolerable. And you yourself refuse to be a hypocrite at any cost. You refuse to compromise your principles, your integrity. You refuse to compromise, in essence, your soul for temporal, worldly gain, for riches of the world, temporary riches of this world. And, these are the kind of people I guess I'm talking to. And then, we all have to go out and talk to people personally, individually, one-on-one, and try to convey the ideas that have been put in our mind from, this higher power, let's call God, or good, just that spirit of goodness, that, of humanity and, goodwill toward all. This is the spirit that you're tapping into. And you're saying, well, all those things that I want, everybody can't have. But you've got to get over that, and you've got to understand that indeed everybody can have the same things that you want. And that's the reality that you have to come to understand, is that the only reason you believe that's not possible is because you've been trained to believe that's not possible. We're being trained by this gaggle of elitist hypocrites at the very top. These are the policymakers, and policy and policeable are one and the same. So whatever policies they decree by fiat, because they declare themselves the kings and rulers of the world by fiat, the money printers primarily, these are the ones that can buy they can have whatever they want through this magic, that they have the copyright to the paper. And then all those minions below them that sell out to them like the politicians. In America today, to me, the vast majority of politicians are behaving nothing better than fascists, okay? I mean that with every fiber of my being. And let me point to how they're going so outside of the will of the people. They continue to take the people of America down paths we don't want to go. The banking bailout of '08. Over 90% of the American people were opposed to that. And this morning I just stumbled upon the fact that knowing that 25% approximately of Americans are employed in the financial services industry, that means that the majority, 15% of that total of 90 were actually, at least, even if the other 10 were all working in the financial services industry, that 15% signifies a majority of people working within the financial services industry were opposed to the banking bailout. In other words, these are decent human beings working in this industry that's destroying us, enslaving our people, putting us in debt, debasing our currency, okay? Because it's not sound. Through inflation, inflation being a hidden tax. And who ends up paying for it? It's always the people at the very bottom that end up paying for it. These people are creating our problems. They are sustained by our problems. If the problems went away, they would end up going away. You know, like the witch in the Wizard of Oz, you know, you pour water on them and, you know, they would just melt away, because if the problems go away, that's what would happen to these people. They would go away. They'd be rendered irrelevant, unnecessary. Nobody would listen to them. Nobody would care about them. So they've got to keep things going the way they're going. So the politicians are not working for the people anymore. They've sold out to these interests. This small minority, even if it's 10% of people that are totally corrupt, you know, and it's this New World Order crowd, these globalists, and they're mean. This is not a good global kind of thing like the return of Jesus and peace on earth and all that, you know, when men will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks like Isaiah talks about. Because now we know who is still the prince of this world. Who is still the prince of this world is the one that Jesus spelled out. It is Satan, literally, to this day, that is ruling over us. And the reason he's ruling over us is because he's willing, that spirit, let's say, and the minions thereof that are intentionally going along with this establishment, this system, this beast system, they're going along with Satan. All those minions are, you know, they're liars and they're murderers and they're thugs. So they're willing to step outside the bounds of common decency. This was what makes them rule over us. This is survival of the cruelest, the meanest, the most ruthless. You know, those that are willing to step outside the bounds of the golden rule, for example, of doing to others as you would like to have done to you. You know, treating others as yourselves, loving one another as you love your very self, as best you can. And, you know, so these are the ones. And then, you know, they're writing the curriculums that they hand to the educational system, and all these teachers and professors within the system, they're basically, wittingly or unwittingly, going along with the party line. But we need to understand, in all these complexes, and the mainstream media complex, it's another one too. Just like Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex way back when I was a little bitty baby. You know, I didn't remember the live speech, but I've seen it since then. And, you know, he warned about this military-industrial complex, that there was, you know, this sinister, diabolical, dark, hidden, occult element within them. You know, these secret societies like JFK talked about. And that we could not trust these people, that we had to demand justice, or else we were going to just get walked all over. And that's exactly what's happened to this day. We see what's really happened. And, you know, it's really pitiable. But we've also got the debt industrial complex. You know, that's the financial industrial complex. And their job is to put people in debt individually as best they can, and nationally, statewide, however they can, is to get their product out there, because that's what they've got. They've got this copyrighted magic piece of paper, and they just want to get it out there. They want you to pledge for it. Okay, yes, I'll take it on. And so from there on out, it becomes debt maintenance. You know, you've got to pay more and more and more. So it's a scam. I mean, it's obviously a Ponzi scheme, a pyramid scheme. You know, and it's hypocrites, it's elitist hypocrites that are these policymakers that are deciding these things. And you know what? And most people, they just want to bury their head in the sand and give up, because they say, you know something, this really sucks. I know this guy is right, but you know something, I don't know what I can do about it. But you know what? You've got to do something, because to be silent is to be complicit. You understand? It's really that simple. If you just go along with it and you say, well, this is, you know, the easiest path for me, I'm taking the path of least resistance, and in my mind that's logical. You've been trained to believe that. and you've got to get out of your stupor, and you've got to say, you know something, I've got to be a voice. I've got to at least make sure everybody that knows me knows where I stand. I'm on the side of humanity and not inhumanity. I do believe there's solutions to our problems, and I do believe there's creators of our problems and maintainers of our problems. And we've all got to come to that understanding. It's just like this whole thing about global warming and, climate change, and, this is because of human activity. We're burning fossil fuels and all this stuff, that creates carbon dioxide, CO2. And, as if this is a bad thing, when the plants really need this to thrive. So it's a ridiculous argument. They, these quote scientists, they don't talk about the fact that the sun is the biggest driver in the temperature of the planet, these sun flares and whatnot. I mean, these things are cosmically controlled, the climate, but these people are usurpers. They're usurping God's authority, Mother Nature's authority, because God is part and parcel of all the flora and fauna and everything we can see and touch and taste and hear. I mean, it's all, one and the same. It's God Almighty, and we're a part of that whole thing. And, this goes on forever. So it's important that people get comfortable with who they are as a person, as an individual. Is your heart pure in the sight of God? Have you checked in lately? Have you, really tried to understand that, you could be deceived in your own mind. You might be thinking about something the wrong way, and you need to really just say, you know what, I got to think about this a lot differently. All these people that disagreed within the financial industry, for example, they need to tell their bosses and say, they need to speak out. They need to be vocal and say, you know what, this is, touching an integrity bone within me, and it's searing my conscience, and I cannot go along with this program because it doesn't end well. It can't end well. Okay, it just means more and more intentional impoverishment, austerity. This is how you oppress people. Artificial scarcity. Okay, because take the dirty fuel. There's plenty of suppressed clean technology. I mean, by now, come on, it's rudimentary science to believe that we could have a miniaturized hydrogen production unit under the hood of our car. Guys have already done this. Look up Stanley Meyer with the 100 mile to a gallon water car that he developed. And it was producing hydrogen on demand. You don't even have to drive around with a bomb, because hydrogen is extremely flammable. And right now we know there's hydrogen vehicles, but you got to go get a tank filled up with hydrogen. So, the idea of hydrogen on demand only is a really superlative, innovation. And it's really, when you think about it, it's not that far out, because, I mean, hell, we've got computers that can fit on a wristwatch these days, when just, 30, 40 years ago, they said a computer couldn't be made smaller than, a small building practically. So we know the innovation is there. But then you look at all the interest. Whose toes would you be stepping on if you solve the problem? You understand? We're captives now. We're all like slaves playing into this money-based reality, this monetary-based reality that they've developed. And it really is like a false god competing for our affections and our attention. We've got to fundamentally understand that these are teachings from Jesus, that money is this false master, and we cannot serve successfully both God and money. So it's far better to choose the loftier value, of pleasing God, your creator, believing that this is all a big mystery. It's a miracle and you're a part of it. And there's this idea that, you're an eternal being, and that when you die, you don't really die. It's only your body, your mortal body, that you shed. But then you go on from there as this powerful, invisible entity, this created being that's created to live not for a little while, this 120 years maybe if you're lucky, but forever and ever. And that's why, you've got this instinct to protect, what you believe is most valuable, like your integrity, your honor, your dignity, your self-respect, your conscience. And you say, you know what? Not only am I not going to sell my conscience, but I am going to treasure it up, and I'm going to value it above all else. The matters of my heart, these are things that nobody can take from me. They can't take my imagination. They can't take the fact that I believe that I can live in a world where everybody is free. Everybody lives in security and prosperity, and we're having fun, man. I mean, it'd be so different to go and serve one another freely of your own volition, because nothing was going to stop you, because you had an instinct to not be hedonistic, to not sit around being self-serving, to not be small-minded, but to care. we've been inculcated and brainwashed to believe that we're these brute beasts. That no, you got to just play the game. It's tough, you know. Life's tough. Then you die, you know. You pay taxes and die. The only two inevitable things that we all have to go through. But I say it's a bunch of bull.